Welcome to episode 98 of Comic Book Nation, the official podcast of Comicbook.com. I'm your host, Kofi Outlaw, and with me today, replacing my other co-host, once again, we have some fine fill-ins in the form of Megan Peters making a return. You've also seen Charlie Ridgely pretty recently.
Hello.
And over there in the cut, VIP booth, we'll call it, Mr. Brandon Davis is with us.
I got the bottles on the way in my VIP booth.
Like, what do I have to do
for some girls with like sparklers, like, you know.
Like, what do I have to do to get over there?
Usually you should start with doing something that makes me feel the physical need to put you like further away from me.
Yeah, I don't shower. I'm just
kidding.
So
BD's over there. BD's over there because like we just got to get over there when it's like he's good for featured commentary. So we need a whole BD cam. I don't know if you've seen this site. Mm-hmm. But it works out pretty well for us, so we don't try to change the formula up now.
It's like at the adoption center.
Don't try to punch me and then rub it in. All right.
No, it's like the adoption center.
It was like, here, take it. Now I'm tickling you.
Yeah, I mean, I told you that's. I think I've made it pretty clear. I think I've made it pretty clear. That's what this show is all about.
Brandon's in the pound.
I'm comparing him to like the kitty cam, like that they have at the Humane Society.
So I come with that song. Like,
Sarah McLachlan? No, we don't have money for that. So today we got this crew together, and this is some of our comic book all-stars here, because we have a lot to talk about on a variety of subjects. We're going to get into the finale and recap spoilers for DC's Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover. A lot of you were asking for that, but we wanted to give people time to get caught up on the DVRs and all that. We also got something new happening from the DC universe, sort of, that has Brandon kind of triggered, so we're going to let him go off on that. We're going to try to give Charlie a segment to do on the fly and see how that goes. That could crash and burn. But then we got some reviews of things that are coming out this week. The new movies are Bad Boys for Life, Dr. Dolittle, and we have a new game, Dragon Ball Z, Kakarot. We told you we'd be giving you kind of first impressions. Megan's had some time to go through the game at least a little bit in this epic journey that this game is. So she'll kind of break it down for all you anime fans, what this game is about, and does it honor the Dragon Ball legacy properly. But first, we got to do something administratively in the business. We don't usually try to get too heavy on the podcast. We try to keep it light and entertaining. But there was a big announcement that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson lost his father, Rocky Johnson, famous WWE Hall of Fame wrestler. And, you know, we love The Rock on this show. It's no secret. BD actually, it's not a lie to say you actually know The Rock personally and are on a friendly basis with him. And The Rock and his family also come from my wife's hometown, and they were like really known in our hometown of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And so this is a sad loss for all the fans and everybody who kind of knows The Rock personally or has ever met his family. So since we are fans of The Rock, we just wanted to take a minute and send our condolences out to him in what is surely a time of grieving, and just send him our well wishes and blessings and, you know, thoughts, prayers, all of that. So that's the heavy part. Let's keep it light and get back into this show. We're going to talk now going from the real life loss to the losses we just experienced on a fictional level, which does not compare at all. This is a horrible transition, but that's how we got to get into Crisis in Infinite Earths. The big finale of this DC Arrowverse crossover has happened. And if you thought, you know, the first few parts we talked about it when they aired before the holiday season, before the Christmas break. And there were so many fun surprises and DC Easter eggs, and especially how it kind of connected and pulled in like virtually like every live action DC TV show from the past or made reference to. We had Smallville references, 90s Flash references, Birds of Prey, 60s Batman, like everything. And we thought like maybe we've reached like peak Easter eggs and crossovers, but no. Crisis on Infinite Earths had some big surprises for us in its fourth chapter. And then we got a kind of epilogue chapter that kind of showed us a new status quo and like what the Arrowverse is going to be going forward. So we're going to get into like what all happened. This will be a full spoilers discussion, obviously, because there's a lot of highlights that are spoilers. So if you haven't seen it, you might want to skip ahead about 10 minutes. Crisis on Infinite Earths is now streaming free on the CW site. There's really no excuse not to see it if you haven't. So just go over there and check it out. But this will be a full spoilers discussion. So, the story for the end of Crisis on Infinite Earths was, story-wise, it was just kind of hokey. I was like trying to follow half of it, and I was just like, okay, sure. Like, the Anti-Monitor wiped out everything. There was a whole mission through the Speed Force that they had to connect with memories. I don't know what that was about. Then they had a fight in Limbo, or the Birth of the Universe, where they kind of defeated the Anti-Monitor and made a new universe, but didn't really defeat the Anti-Monitor and had to have one final fight with him. Oliver Queen died for the 8th time, I believe it is, as the Spectre, after he sacrificed himself to help restart the universe, kind of to, buy a little time of fake defeating the Anti-Monitor, I guess. And that all went down. But the biggest thing that made headlines was in this whole kind of weird Speed Force sequence, when basically the surviving paragons, DC heroes that were like these paragons of different aspects of life and honor and truth and hope and all that stuff, kind of have to use the Speed Force to get out of the kind of limbo they're in, which is basically nowhere. I keep mixing up the franchises in my head between Guardians of the Galaxy's place like in a celestial head and DC's Legends of Tomorrow's place outside of time. But I don't go for really things that are about like memories and jumping through memories and stuff like that. All that surreal stuff is not my favorite in superhero lore. But thankfully, Crisis on Infinite Earths broke it up with an epic cameo wherein Grant Gustin's Flash ran into none other than Ezra Miller's Flash from the DCEU movie and Justice League movie franchise. And Ezra Miller made an appearance in DC TV in full Flash costume from Justice League. And he had this kind of really funny, crazy, surreal meeting with his other TV counterpart that was very meta and very fun, with the two of them kind of riffing off one another. And it sent fans into like a geekasm. Like, this was a big surprise and pretty shocking, because I think before this, all of us would have been like, there's no way that DC movies would ever touch the Arrowverse with a 10-foot pole, at all.
Yeah, but this is also a safe way to do it. Like, it doesn't disrupt anything from the movies necessarily, and it's really exciting. It's fan service, at its best, because it fit here perfectly. I mean, it makes sense for this to happen.
Yeah.
But it also doesn't have an impact on the DCEU if the Flash movie ever actually happens.
Yeah.
And it also kind of just goes to show how much higher quality the movie costume is than the TV costume.
I mean, I was going to comment on that, because
When
in the
you see them next to each
scene-
other,
Huh?
when you see those two costumes next to each other,
Yeah,
I don't
well,
particularly like either of them, to be honest.
I just like how when they were touching each other. Wait, that sounds weird. Like their costumes and stuff.
Yeah.
Grant Gustin was like, "Oh, such high quality," but Ezra Miller was like, "Oh, yours is comfortable."
Yeah.
Let's first, mine looks cool, but it's also
No, there was a lot of
super-
great meta stuff in there.
Yeah, it was great. But I will say, I thought, going off what BD said, it's smart, but also of all of the characters in the DC movie universe right now that need some publicity, it's the Flash. Because Aquaman killed it at the box office. Wonder Woman sequel's coming out. The conversation with the Batman is what it is, but Batman's having a new movie coming out. We'll figure out Superman at some point in time. Birds of Prey, Harley Quinn's fine. But we still don't have the Flash movie. It's been forever. And so to have Ezra Miller kind of come back not only helps service the Arrowverse, or what it was,
Jim
but
Viscardi isn't here, but he was really
Ezra.
feeling himself. He was yelling at everybody who said that Ezra Miller was done as the Flash. There was no way he'd ever show back up in the franchise. And
it doubles down
just
on the
a
fact
great way
that
to
Ezra
remind you that it exists.
It doubled down on the fact that Ezra is a great pick for that character. I've always loved him there, and he just pulled it off again in the short amount of time we've seen him. So my only complaint is I would just like more of him, but that's a conversation for a different time.
It is funny you say it's safe, but now that this scene happens, there's been all kinds of tinfoil hats that people have built about what this scene means and how does it connect possibly to the Flash movie, because there's some specific really strange things that they chose to put in this scene.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the fact that Ezra Miller's Flash doesn't even know the name The Flash until he gets the idea from Grant Gustin, which is but he also references Vic, which is obviously Vic Stone, Cyborg.
That's what I was going to bring up. Man, poor Ray Fisher. He can't even get on CW.
But I bet they would have used Ray Fisher.
They don't have the money for that
but
anymore.
You cannot computerize that costume.
That's true.
And they
If you
filmed
just
this
watch
a
the
week
inside.
ago.
Yeah,
they filmed
that's
this
true.
so last minute. There's no way that.
That's true.
I'm sure Ray Fisher would have been game. No doubt.
100%. That's
But
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
you can't. There's
The
just
only
no way
he
to
could have that
computerize that in
cameo
time.
is if he'd been in the shadows with the hoodie on and you just saw a red light from his eye.
Yeah.
That was the only way they could have afforded to have done
if
that.
you just want to a tracking line for this, you can tell where the budget kind of ran out when in the end of this, like they didn't even bother to transform Martian Manhunter anymore.
Oh yeah, he
was just like, no, I'm just gonna stay like this and fight like
This thing
this.
was ambitious.
Yeah.
This whole thing was very ambitious.
It was
Yeah.
ambitious, especially for whatever their budget might have been. I mean, if this had played out on the big screen and there was like all this lead up to it, like, damn, that would have been
Yeah,
good.
no. This was one of the, as a culminating experience for the Arrowverse, this, as somebody who's kind of stuck with the franchise all throughout, like, this was immensely satisfying payoff.
The question now that I have is who's going to do something with the multiverse in the movies first to kind of take advantage of. DC should do a Crisis on Infinite Earths movie and just take advantage of everything they've done.
Out. It's like, why, yes, this is a fan servicing, but why add all this other weird stuff, all these other weird details to it? And so some people are like now speculating that this could come back and would be fun, actually, to have it come back around in the Flash movie where we get like the other context for what's happening.
I mean, like, because they said the Flash movie is going to be Flashpoint, but not how we're expecting it.
Exactly.
And so I think that leaves a lot of room.
For exactly what you're saying.
It could be really cool, but what I'm getting at, I mean, I think it could be really cool. Like DC has it right at their fingertips to do something like that. I don't think they're going to anytime soon. But I mean, it's like there's two opportunities to do that. One with the Spider-Verse, which we talked about on the last podcast, which would bring back the old Spider-Man stuff, or with the DC universe, you can connect and you can like acknowledge this continuity cluster bumfuzzle that it has become and say like, all right, well, Robert Pattinson is Batman in that universe. Ben Affleck is Batman in this universe. Michael Keaton was Batman in another universe, and like bring these actors back, even as many as you can, not as main characters, but as little supplements for people who like the story, which this just really did. Like a lot of these cameos and stuff weren't main story threads. They're just there to be like, oh, I know that. I'm familiar with that. That's cool to see again. And you can do that in the movies, and I think it would be sweet, but you have to keep, Ezra Miller then becomes like one of the main characters, whereas Grant Gustin would then be the supplement.
Yeah. Yeah. I also think that Flash is going to do a lot more. I don't think they'll do a whole kind of multiverse thing initially, but I think Flash will be the thing that opens the door to that. And simultaneously sweeps out all this stuff they don't want still there.
Yeah.
It kind of does double work of doing that.
Think about all the things Grant Gustin's Flash could have just told him not to do. Because like, he could be like, dude, don't even bother trying to save her. Just, it's not going to work, bro.
Yeah.
But then we wouldn't get the movie.
Like, I would
like
love
how
it.
that warning applies to more than just one person.
Yeah,
It applies
exactly.
to every person almost.
Yeah, I would love it if we found out that this kind of sets the stage for us finding out that like the Flash we meet in the movie isn't the Flash from like the DCEU we thought we knew. Like that it's a different version of him. Kind of similar.
Oh, it's another alternate Earth, but with Ezra Miller?
Yeah, and he already knows he already knows Vic Stone. There's already a Justice League. It's a Justice League with like we don't have to deal with the same actors. It's different, and it's all about him kind of discovering or even kind of coming up against all the other stuff that came before and becoming more aware of that, or just dealing with all of that and straightening it out.
Man,
the only problem is
getting see a Justice League form in like a unanimously beloved film. I
agree.
That has to happen. Like,
Yeah,
you have to
I
get to that.
agreed.
And like, even if like we argue about continuity all the time. Even if they keep doing this thing where the movies don't really connect and eventually they just put them together somehow, that's fine. I just want to see them all in a good movie together.
Yeah, and that's kind of that's the issue you run into when you talk about Crisis or Justice League. Like DC's biggest successes have all been standalone things.
Yeah.
And it's hard to then say that.
Well, it's because they can make the standalone things without relying on the other things,
Right.
Whereas they rushed into these things and the studio got involved.
I agree.
And I mean, I liked watching Justice League because I was excited to see these characters together. But we all know that movie is what that movie is. But I thought it was just entertaining as a fan of these characters to see them together in live action.
Yeah.
That was enough for me to enjoy watching it the first few times I watched it. And now it's just doesn't hold up.
Well, I mean, there's been this like overarching conversation for like over a decade now since the MCU's been at it, doing their own like multiverse, like not multiverse, well, kind of sort of now, but like connected cinematic universe and like how DC could differ from it because they can't or they shouldn't ideally be like an exact copy of one another. And I think a really smart way for DC to do it is to hop around. They prove that they can do it with the TV shows. So like have these standalone shows. Their narratives I don't think necessarily need to interact with one another until they get to a team up. And then they can decide if they want to change the narrative to be a conjoined one or to split it out again. It makes it more approachable for people who don't want to follow the narrative because like the MCU does kind of necessitate you follow these 20 plus movies to understand an overarching story. It'd be nice if, for instance, whatever the DC films does, you can watch Flash and Wonder Woman, but you don't need to watch Aquaman and whatever other movies come out to be able to watch the inevitable Justice League.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, and so far that's worked on the Arrowverse. Supergirl, Black Lightning, all that stuff was separate, and it was really cool to see them all come together. And we should probably touch on before we move on, like, yeah, that the end of this is when they made this new universe. Now all the Arrowverse shows are in one universe. Like that's the whole
it's
thing.
totally different.
Yeah, Supergirl's Earth is merged with the Earth that has Arrow, Flash, and Batgirl. Black Lightning's now part of that Earth. Like, and so going forward, we're going to be dealing with a whole new Arrowverse essentially.
Yeah.
Where, and this is kind of another conversation I want to end on, but yeah, it's also worked in, and this Crisis confirmed that also the DC Universe shows are taking that approach. Like, they all exist in their own Earths. One of the montages at the end of this is like, what are all the Earths that are still active in this franchise? And they don't just do the Arrowverse, they do the DC Universe shows too. So you see Titans, Doom Patrol, Stargirl gets revealed for the first time, and you see Swamp Thing, who looks like the saddest, like loneliest person sitting in the rain.
I know that was
I know.
so.
And that show was so good.
But it was so sad. He's just sitting alone on this bank on this rainy Earth by himself. No one cares. We'll never see him again.
It has to be a commentary.
Yeah. And so, like, yeah, they're not connected, but if they ever come in together, if Doom Patrol ever shows up in Titans again, you know, all of that, like, what does that mean? That's going to be cool.
Was Joaquin Phoenix's Joker in it?
No.
Just kidding.
Good.
No. But,
out
so
right
now the question is, do we care about the Arrowverse? Do you think this, I mean, because for a lot of people, this could be an easy hopping off point. Even though they do something cool at the end, they form a Justice League. They actually form like a real Arrowverse Justice League, which is, if you're Stephen and Mel, you're probably going to be like, yeah.
Also,
because they were like,
they did
wait,
that a
what
little
are we gonna
dirty.
do? What are we gonna do to form a Justice League? They're like, what's standing in our way? And it's just like
Him.
this guy.
He also, that was a
Kill
really
him
terrible death. That sucked.
It wasn't the best of his 8. Like,
he was.
He's had
that
a lot
was
of deaths in the
solid
show.
7. That was a solid 7 in my opinion.
Yeah, like
So.
he's had a lot of deaths in the show, and this was not the best.
Yeah, it was not great.
So,
Yeah, but I don't know. We'll say I think that in terms of the Arrowverse, though, I mean, I care. I'm invested, but I will be interested to see what their next initiative is when these shows are kind of like reassimilating to this new universe.
And I feel like now they're banking on Arrow's done. People are getting tired of the individual shows a little bit. I think a lot more of these we're all in the same universe stuff is going to be what you see going forward.
Well, and that's why Legends has been so fun from the beginning.
Yeah, Legends always has just.
But all right, if you guys have any more stuff, we got to move on. We spent a lot of time on the Crisis on Infinite Earths, but check that out. Let us know what you think and what your Arrowverse plans are going forward. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about a couple things that are happening in the DC Universe Aquaman franchise, and we have all these reviews to get to as well, so stay tuned for that. All right, so we got a bit of news. Sorry, Charlie, we're going to probably cut your segment on the fly for time here, but it was about the Peacock service, so we'll probably get into that next week when we have all the information, but there's a lot coming out about this new NBC Peacock service, which is very different from most of the services we're seeing now, like Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu, HBO Max. So you want to be sure to check that out on Comicbook.com, TV, movies, wherever we have it right now. But we found out that we were getting a new Aquaman project, and for a second, we were all excited. And then we weren't. And BD, I felt like you felt the most betrayed by this whole thing. We're getting an Aquaman miniseries coming to HBO Max. But explain to us the premise of what this show is going to be, BD.
An animated show, first of all.
And it's about...
First of all.
I'm going to ignore that slight. Continue.
It's anime, which is okay. Like, that's cool. But, like, is Jason Momoa involved? Probably not. Is Amber Heard and Willem Dafoe involved?
I am almost
Probably not.
guaranteed Jason
We'll see.
will be...
It's only 3 episodes, so maybe they'll do it.
Episodes with only voice work is how you get them involved.
Jason Momoa will be involved. Amber
Regardless,
not.
it's about his first day as king, and that's it. Like, he's probably just gonna get drunk and like punch people because that's what I think he would be doing. I don't know, throw Ocean Master in a Atlantean prison cell and go have a beer because that's what that Arthur Curry would want to do. I
bet that's not what they're gonna do though in a show.
I feel like
I mean, obviously, it's not what they're going to do in the show. I don't really care. Like, am I going to watch it? Yeah, sure. If it was in live action, hell yes, I would watch it. Animated could be cool, but
I just loved how fired up you got about when this came out. You were like, what? And it is fair because, like, as I put in the show notes, like, is this what you're coming with on your streaming service? Like, Disney Plus is rolling out actual MCU shows, and you're like, so we got more Aquaman for you. Remember $1 Billion Aquaman? You want to see his first day as king? We'll animate that for you. Here you go. And it's like, those two things do not compare.
no.
Yeah.
If the theme song is Pitbull's Africa, though, I will forgive it.
Disney, it's hard to compete. It's hard. I think it's hard to compete with Disney Plus on that front just because Disney owns so much IP.
Yeah.
yeah.
But that said, and also they have a lot of IP that's just rolling hot.
Yeah.
I mean, Star Wars not necessarily rolling hot, but The Mandalorian was damn near perfect.
Yeah.
And Marvel is just so popular that you can roll out anything, and there's going to be a built-in audience that's excited. And DC, Aquaman has a built-in audience, but the DCEU is not as,
Well,
I guess,
HBO
unified.
Max,
It would be the word for it. And you give us an animated show at best, like.
well, first, is HBO Max going to be available in China? Like, because that's my question. Because a lot of money for Aquaman came from China for that $1 billion.
I don't know.
So, like,
I
it's
don't know.
interest points. I'm curious where that demographic spread lays. The other question I have is, why are they going to focus on Aquaman for this? And if they could have saved it and possibly tried to have done a live action thing, and instead for HBO Max, but like a 10-minute preview of Wonder Woman. Like, I'm not.
There's already so much really good animated DC content.
Yeah.
I think that works toward it, and that's the thing with one. I mean, you're talking about the IP. I think that HBO Max does not have the IP that Disney has, but we all already pay $15 for HBO.
I don't.
I mean, a lot of
do
people do.
not.
You're
the only one
a
out
lot
of
of people.
us
Yeah,
four.
thank you, HBO Go.
Literally the only one on this panel right now.
I mean, HBO. People pay for HBO. It thrives.
One person does.
Ever since Game of
the rest
Thrones,
of us use your password.
I understand.
But someone pays.
I'm the only
You use it,
person
someone
here.
pays for it.
I'm the only person here who didn't watch Watchmen, but I haven't paid for HBO since Game of Thrones.
I'm just saying, a lot of people still do. You might be an exception, but a lot of people still do.
A lot of people don't. You're giving it a lot.
I'm just saying, you've already got. If you're going to have HBO, and then for the same price, you can also have all this other stuff that kind of helps sell itself. And when you're talking about Aquaman, it does feel a little.
You
like
mean to tell me you think you're going to reach a mainstream audience with an animated Aquaman show?
No.
You're going to reach the DC fans, which is great.
No.
There is a lot of
That's
people.
not what I'm getting at.
But there are different quantities
I agree.
of a lot.
I don't think the goal is to, with that specific project, reach a big wide audience. I think that there are more so than these other movies. There's a lot of time between Aquaman and Aquaman 2. We are waiting a long time between these two movies.
Yeah.
Here is a way cheaply to keep that going, keep people excited as the time passes, and help bridge the gap between those two movies. And that it gives us that opportunity.
And set the stage for like wherever Aquaman 2 picks up.
Yeah,
I mean,
It's better than a Prelude comic, I'll give it that.
yeah, and with the
Prelude comics
MCU
suck.
Yeah.
the MCU
Unless we're
oh, sorry,
talking Rise of Kylo
Kylo Ren, yeah.
the
Don't knock
MCU
my ride.
I'm throwing shade at Marvel Prelude comics. Those always are.
the MCU shows the reason the MCU can do that and thrive is because of the amount of characters that they have, and DC doesn't have that built up yet. I think the DC could do that, but
DC has a lot of characters.
I mean,
already.
in the live action movie,
Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman.
you're not going to put them as. But what I'm
Cyborg,
saying,
Flash.
are we getting a
they've
Captain
tried it
Marvel
with,
or
like, the
Black Panther or
CW
Spider-Man
stuff.
TV show?
Yeah.
Like the CW.
I mean, I'll
stuff.
happily take a live action Aquaman show. That'd be way cooler.
But they're not going to do that because that's one of their staple characters they're saving for the movies, and the budget is too big. What I'm saying with the
We're getting a Moon Knight show.
that can be cheaper than an Aquaman movie. That Aquaman movie.
I'm not talking about budget. I'm not talking
I know,
about
but
Moon
I'm
Knight
saying-
could be a
but Moon
top
Knight-
tier character in the MCU.
Maybe, but it's.
What do you-
it's-
what
but
are
I'm
you
saying
giving me
it's
that
not.
face for?
It's not Captain Marvel. It's not
They
Black
made
Panther.
Iron
It's
Man a
not
top-tier
Spider-Man. It's
character.
not Doctor Strange. They did, and that established that. But now what they're doing with the shows to start is taking the lesser tier characters from the movies, the ones we all really love.
Like
Sam
and they're
Wilson.
also filling in gaps between movies.
I agree with that.
They're not,
That is
they're
a
not
good
giving us
point.
the biggest top tier characters from the movies on the TV shows. They're saving them for the movies.
Well, here's my thing. What I'm interested in is the CW has tried like things like the CW Seed.
Yeah.
That online thing where they drop a whole bunch of animated series that you've probably never heard of. Everyone from like The Ray to
Vixen
to like Deathstroke, or is that on Disney or DC Universe right now? Anyway, there's a bunch of these like animated shorts, but they're never really been acknowledged as mainstream. They've never been focused on. Even the DC Universe animated features used to come with like shorts that were pretty good. I'm interested to see how that audience, if that is still there for a very popular DC animated wing of the brand, how that translates on a streaming service. I don't know that'll be a success. I think they're testing the waters and they're using something big and recognizable to do it. But I'm going to be interested to see what the reaction is.
If it was any of their characters that they have introduced in the movies in a live action 3-episode miniseries, it would get more subscriptions than an animated show would.
I mean,
absolutely, no doubt.
Right,
no doubt. I'm not disagreeing with you on that. I'm saying I think they're testing the waters on how their animation brand will function in a streaming platform.
And that makes sense because HBO Max has put a sizable amount of money into animation. They have Crunchyroll wrapped in, they have Toonami, Adult Swim, and they got the entire Studio Ghibli library to stream, which I don't even want to know how much money that costs. Studio Ghibli is expensive, and they have never done that before. So
the streaming wars are coming down to what properties do you own?
Yeah, exactly.
Which major franchise can you put on your streaming service at launch is what it's coming down to. Yeah. And Netflix is being the one forced to create all original stuff because everything went to Disney and Warner Brothers, and some of it went to Peacock, I guess, because Universal, right? That's Universal?
Yeah.
So they might have like Fast and Furious stuff on there. How long till we get a Fast and Furious TV show? But also another thing for me goes back to, we had this conversation when we talked about Star Wars, where if it's not in the movie, it shouldn't count. And I was hesitant with Disney Plus doing all these Marvel shows, thinking, this might be overdoing it. A lot of people aren't going to watch these because it's like it's not movies anymore. So you're going to have a lot of gaps in people's knowledge, and then you have different conversations, and it's going to be a required thing to get the full experience, which changes it. To go from a live action movie to a live action TV show is one thing. To go from a live action movie to an animated TV show is a whole different thing. And I think if it's gotta, you're just changing your consistency of it. And I'm gonna watch this Aquaman animated thing. I'm not super hyped for it like Charlie appears to be, which is fine.
I'm not. But I just don't. I think it. To me, it makes sense.
Well, the bottom line is, all I'm saying is, I don't think this is a good play, and I don't think the purpose of this play is for the Aquaman DC brand to build that universe. I think it's to test the waters of the animation side more so.
Yeah.
And they're using a popular brand that they have to test those waters.
I mean,
it's weird. That to me is weird. Like,
it's weird.
What they're doing is they're not just making an animated thing because they already have tons of animated content. They could bring back Batman the animated series, do more stories there.
Yeah.
But they're relying on a very popular movie to test the waters on that.
Yep.
So it's all right, so then are we going to get a Shazam animated show next? Are we going to get
Aquaman takes off?
Yeah, we might.
See, Shazam is the only one that I can see being a live action show. And that's where it's like,
but don't do both. Do what? That
I don't know what they're gonna do. So let's not get too far down the rabbit hole on this. But
I'm just happy to be getting content in general. I'd like to point that out before everybody starts crapping on me for whatever reason, because that's all comment sections like to do. But I'm gonna watch this and give it a fair shot, obviously, and it'll be really cool if they bring the voices of the actors back. But I would just like consistency.
I mean, it is well documented, your consistency things. But I'm proud. You're starting to loosen up. You're embracing this Morbius Spider-Verse thing. You're starting to loosen up. I like it. So
Morbius changed my mind on that.
There we go.
A little bit.
BD is an evolving person. All right. So we're going to deep dive into some reviews this week. Everybody on the couch has one to do, so I guess we'll just go in order of the couch. I'll start. I'm here. I'm going to review Bad Boys for Life. I'm going to give you a spoiler-free review because I want you guys to go out and see this. So Bad Boys is coming back. It's been 13 years since Bad Boys 2. It's been much longer since Bad Boys 1 in 1995.
17 years, I think. 2003.
17 years, is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's been a long time.
Oh, God. Oh, what did I say, 13 years?
Yeah.
God.
03, I get it.
Oh, it's been 17 years. All right, so there you go. Even longer, man. I feel so old. anyway, that's a good jumping off point because the theme of Bad Boys for Life is, everybody gets old and you can't bad boy forever. So that's a kind of general theme. And this movie was made not by Michael Bay. It's made by two guys named Adil and Bilal, who have done like music videos. They've done episodes of Snowfall, which is one of my favorite shows on TV right now. And so they take over the reins, and people like Joe Carnahan, Peter Craig did the story for this. And because Michael Bay's not here, there's an actual story to this movie. And that seems to be what people are connecting with the most. There's a lot more drama in this than any other Bad Boys movie in terms of the character interactions and how serious it is and how meta it is with Will Smith and Martin particularly, who are both aging in very different ways. Like Martin is aged and obviously doesn't look like a movie star anymore. And that's not a knock on Martin. I mean, that's just a fact. There's a lot of people in this movie who show up from the franchise since it began. And you're like, wow, time is crazy because you remember, especially if you've watched the first two recently, you'll see this one and be like, holy crap, like people age. And so Martin hasn't aged like nearly as movie star fashion. He's not really in the limelight anymore. And so it adds this meta layer to what Bad Boys for Life is about, because it is about his character kind of speaking to his real life experience while yelling at Will Smith, who is still like in movies. And there's even jokes about like what dye he uses to take the grays out of his hair, like when he does movies and stuff. Like, I know you use this dye chestnut to, to hide all your grays. And he's like, what grays? Like, blah, blah. And then later on, there's a scene with him like in full grays. So all of that is kind of really makes a strong emotional core for Bad Boys for Life. And while the directors don't do like action scenes as big as Bay, they still have a kind of cool style. They do a very video gamey kind of style. So there's like shootouts and the camera swings and it like swings to this corner of the room and you watch this character play their little scene and then it swings over here and then like you see that. And so there's still action. There's still a lot of comedy. This movie is full of like callbacks and Easter eggs to the franchise. Familiar faces, even like minor faces show up in some key places that are really hilarious. People involved with the franchise show up, and so there's all of that fun to it if you're a longtime fan of the franchise. If you're a new fan, then this is just a kind of good aging buddy cop story about two guys. And it's a lot less. I'm trying not to say anything because there's so many twists and spoilers in this movie, surprisingly, that I don't want to give anything away, including how it plays and the pacing of it is not how you might expect. But it does a kind of good job, even though it's a slow burn, and that's my one criticism of it, to build up to that old Bad Boys swagger again with Mike Lowry and Marcus Burnett when they finally get back in sync and they're going to go and kick some ass. Like, it's a slower burn, but it's worthwhile because there's actual, like I said, emotional core and drama to this. And then when they get back into the swagger, it's really good. The really kind of fun thing about this installment are the new additions, the Ammo Squad, who are these younger kind of, millennial tech-based cops that are a special unit in Miami, and they're really great additions, and they riff with Martin and Will Smith very well. And that team is like Vanessa Hudgens, Powell and Nunez, if you watch the Purge season 2, who was like a breakout star of that, and she's going to be a pretty big star right up there with Ana de Armas, this Latin takeover that's happening. But so she's like kind of a foil for Will Smith, and she's great in that. The kid from, I forget his name, I'm blanking on his name, I knew it just a second ago, but the kid who played Kato in the Hunger Games, who's like, he's huge. He plays like a huge guy, but because of some backstory stuff, he no longer like does any SWAT stuff, so he became the tech guy, and there's like a whole line of jokes about how this huge dude is just the tech guy in this team, and like Marcus is always yelling at him like to get up and do something. And the whole squad's very good, and they riff very well with each other, and they are so good about giving Martin and Will Smith crap and doing that whole back and forth that they're a good addition to the team. And Bad Boys in the end kind of does leave the stage set for there to be more. And I think this movie is kind of the Fast and Furious of it. It's better than Fast and Furious, but it's that kind of weird, like, we came back, it's been a long time, nobody thought we were going to do this, here we are. But, how movies are these days, there could be a future. So there's even a button scene, so be sure to make sure you see that. It's not too long in the credits or anything. You don't have to wait. But at the core of it, Martin and Will Smith still have their chemistry. It's interesting to see somebody besides Michael Bay try to infuse this with some heart and soul. And even though it's kind of a slower paced movie than the kind of nonstop action jokes of the first two. It's a kind of a more meaningful story in a weird way, especially when you get to all the meta stuff. So I was really worried about this film, but I'm going to say it's my first pleasant surprise of 2020. I'm hoping there's more, so I would say you go out and see Bad Boys for Life. All right, so that does it for me. Megan Peters, take us through Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. If you guys also want to see Megan play the game, that we have a playthrough video that's hot right now on the site. Be sure to check that out. But Megan, should we be buying Dragon Ball Z Kakarot?
So, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, the countdown's on. It comes out January 17th. So, by the time you listen to this, it'll be out, I believe. Mm-hmm. Yes?
Yep.
Yeah. So, hey, go buy it right now. Pause, come back after you bought the game. You can get it digitally or in stores. So, I've had about 5 to 6 hours with the game so far. This, I will go ahead and let you know, it is a long game. But before I get in further, it's a good game. Like, I am going to be completely honest with you. I played this game early at San Diego Comic-Con this summer. I got in early, and they just said, play for, like, as long as you want until someone kicks you out. So I just stayed there for, like, an hour. And I wasn't sure how I felt. Now, both as a huge fan of Dragon Ball, but also as a fan of just kind of, like, RPGs, like, that's my place with gaming. It's really fun. It's way more interactive than I thought it would be. And so for any of you who are listening who do not know what this game is, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot basically is a retelling of the Dragon Ball Z anime, and you get to play as all the characters. And when I mean all the characters, I mean all of them. Like, everyone shows up from the series that you remember. So obviously you get to play as Goku, Gohan, Vegeta, you name them, they're there. What I think is most interesting about this story, and I'm by no means a gaming expert. I'm not really great at games unless it's Animal Crossing, and then I will destroy you. But it's an easy game to pick up, even with fighting. I'm not necessarily great, but it feels very cinematic in every way you play. It's the cel-shaded artwork that you should be familiar with from a lot of anime-style games, as well as the Dragon Ball FighterZ, which came out a couple of years ago. So it looks great. It feels fantastic. There's a lot of cutscenes. So even if you're a complete newcomer to the franchise, if you're just looking for an epic kind of story-driven RPG to play, like, this is a really good one to buy into, even if you aren't obsessed with Dragon Ball. Like, you can catch up with the story. It does a really good job of keeping you up to pace with what's happening. But as a Dragon Ball fan, for any of you who are listening, the best part by far is the story. Within the first 30 minutes, I was already reconsidering the way that I have viewed, for example, Goku and Gohan's father-son relationship. Like, it's a big joke. Like, Goku
Are they going to kill my Piccolo jokes?
Yeah, like, they're trying to kill your Piccolo.
Can't retroactively make Goku a father.
Yeah, like, within the first 30 minutes, you get some really interesting moments of conversation between Goku and Gohan that make you realize, like, there's so much, like, father-son relationship there that we never saw in the anime, because the anime had a very quick narrative to follow. It didn't go into the nitty gritty. Like, I guarantee you in the anime you never saw Goku and Gohan go apple picking, but that's a submission in here that you can do if you want. And so if you're looking for that story that you never got in Dragon Ball Z, you can find it in this game. And since the creator Akira Toriyama did supervise a lot of this game, a lot of this stuff is being considered canon to the Dragon Ball Z anime. So it's been a really great way to kind of pick apart news stories if you're a fan of the franchise. It's a touching story if you're not a fan of the franchise. Plenty of gameplay. It's smooth gameplay with good camera controls and melee options. So far, I'm really satisfied. From what I understand, people are playing upwards of 60 hours in this mainline game, and there's updates to come. So I still have a lot more to play, but, like, I'm legitimately excited to go home and play it with my cat. Also, my cat loves it. Bonus points. She
Sounds like if your father's been neglecting you lately, and I know that pain, I can go and play this game and get some fulfillment.
Yeah, for real.
I'm not very good at RPG games. Like, I'm just not good at, I don't know, maybe.
Is it the role? Is it the playing? Is it the game?
It's my I don't know, maybe I'm just not smart enough to, like, keep up with all the leveling up and all the different, like, some games just really have a lot to it, and my attention span when playing a game often calls for Modern Warfare Online or Rocket League, because it's 10 minutes long and I don't have to level stuff up. as somebody who's not that great at
I feel
RPGs,
like that's BD speak for like I got to be able to play it when I've had a few. Like,
will I enjoy this game? Because I mean, I liked Final Fantasy X. That's probably the last RPG I played all the way through, and that was 15
that was a
years
great
ago.
one.
Yeah,
and that was a very cinematic one. To be fair,
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
You're like some awesome cinematic moments,
Yeah.
a lot of cool, like
Yeah, the cinematic moments will definitely get to you. And I'll be honest, I love RPGs, but I do not do any of that stuff like leveling up or like board additions to up my stats for defense or special.
We're too busy
attacks.
leveling up in real life, baby.
Yeah, I don't do that. Mainly my point is I want to see the cute stories and go fight someone or play the fishing.
so.
in
But
a
you
game.
can kind of just like you don't have to
Yeah.
be diving into these like
No,
level
no,
boards.
no,
all
no,
that.
no, no.
You can just kind of play the game.
I've been making really steady progress.
Yeah, no,
and I don't
thankfully,
do that.
that's one good thing is like, God, I hate old man outlawing myself, but like back in the days, like they have, I love RPGs have softened up that like you can be a lot more free.
Yeah. You
free
can if
freedom.
you
Like
want.
stop right here. I'm just gonna stop right here and stop for a minute and
Yeah.
like go away. You don't have to be locked into like a maze or a dungeon for 3 hours
Yeah.
before you can get out. And
Yeah.
no, mom, I'm like 3/4 of the way through. I gotta
Yeah.
kill this boss. I can't start this over. Like
Yeah.
so. A lot more low pressure in
Yeah,
RPGs.
it's very freeing. You can be fighting Vegeta, and then you can be like, "Hold up, I need to stop. There's a robot over there, and I feel like punching it in the face." So you can
I dig
you,
that.
you get that
Okay.
freedom. So
I'm probably getting this game.
I think Megan's pushing this because she just wants more Dragon Ball writers for anime, and like this game looks like a quick
Help.
like starter course. for,
Recap
like,
to the
everybody.
rescue.
Yeah.
Video
yeah,
game.
basically, this is shorter than you watching the entire series.
And probably better and more streamlined. So
the Frieza fight.
I
will
went
not
back
last
to
nearly
watch
as
like
long.
original Dragon Ball stuff. I think it was on Hulu, and I couldn't.
it's rough. It's hard if you're not invested.
Yeah,
it's
the
really rough.
animation
I
of
watched
it
through a bunch of it
has not
this
held
past
the
year.
test
Yeah.
of time.
Yeah, it gets and a lot of it can get really weird and offensive
Oh yeah,
sometimes.
it is. If you watch it close, it can be problematic. It's really
Yeah,
funny.
I will just say this because it's not, and I'll go quick because I know Charlie has his review and so does Brandon. But there is a adult community board, and I'm not going to tell you what that means. But when you think of somebody talking about adult community board,
Is it a Mr. Roshi?
In anime,
and it has to do with
Excuse
Mr.
me?
Roshi.
Oh, of course it does.
So Master Roshi, adult community board. You can imagine what is discussed there.
Roshi's.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I honestly don't know.
Roshi's anime has a proud tradition of having pervert
likes,
characters, and he's like an old man perfect character who loves young girls
perverted
with
things.
big boobs and stuff. Yeah. He's really crazy. He's Goku's like mentor and master.
He's the little guy that lives like in the island with the turtle shell. Long white beard, sunglasses.
Yeah, that's
Brandon, as you can see,
This is
gave me a
awesome.
I know who you're
completely-
talking.
We should have a
about,
whole segment of Brandon just learning what Dragon
but
Ball is. This is
that's a
gonna be-
lot.
I watched a lot of the original Dragon
Do
Ball.
I have
for
to
the first
review
time.
something, by the way?
No, you're
Okay.
good. You're good.
All right.
No, you're good.
No,
I
we
was
gotta
just
end
trying to-
soon.
Because she said that, and I was like, oh, I didn't do the homework.
I was trying to psych you out.
You did.
You'd have jumped right into it. It'd have been great. But no, we are about to come down to the end of time, so we're gonna end with Charlie. Charlie's been a champion of seeing all kinds of crazy movies for us lately, and you went and took the bullet for Cats. Which,
Well, the weird thing is
while
that-
we're here,
Why would you
let's get-
take a
wait, while
bullet
we're
for
here-
cats? They have 9 lives.
Well, here, wow. Okay, here. Since Charlie's
Brandon
here,
hates cats.
Charlie's got a couple 2020 I told you so he gets to get out of the way. We
yeah.
said that next time you were on, you could do this.
The Cats one, I'll wait until it actually becomes a cult hit.
Well, it's becoming a cult. They did a major article about how it's becoming a stoner cult
Yeah,
hit. Like,
it was in the
stoners.
Washington Post or New York Times
People
or
just
something when
getting
they're
ripped
talking
on
about
edibles and going to see
people
cats.
taking mushrooms and seeing cats and how
That's
it's
it.
like a
Soon
phenomenon.
as soon as there are flights to Mars, I am on the first one. I'm out. I'm
I
done
mean,
with this
it is.
planet. I'm out.
Cats is
And
wild.
then New Mutants was the other one.
Yes,
That's right.
New Mutants. I've been excited to just. I came on the shot. It was a couple weeks ago.
Yep,
we all talked.
it
and
was right
like-
before they said it was
and I
coming out in
said,
theaters.
It's not
It was
like
like
it's going to
2
hit
episodes.
theaters. It is definitely going to come out, and everyone in the office told me I was crazy, and it's coming out.
Well,
in
we
theaters.
told you you were crazy, and it shouldn't. You were
I am-
wrong.
I
in your
am
opinion.
crazy. That's
One
a
of those
different
things
thing.
is still true, but it
Right.
is coming out. Yes.
And that's the weird thing about this Cats and Dolittle is that I'm the
You
one who
thought Dolittle was
plans-
good?
No. I'm the one.
getting
who-
to that. That's
I'm,
our
I'm the
review.
one that. Well, it's weird because I'm the one that
I don't
plans
know
who
with him.
writes
I don't.
what
I never
reviews.
know with him.
That's why I love Charlie on the show.
Oh my.
I'm the one that I help coordinate. Who writes what review, and I have 2 reviews in a row were Cats and Dolittle, and they're 2 of the most bananas movies I've seen in a really
Yeah,
long
but
time.
sometimes you go see things that are bananas, and you're like, it was so bananas that it was good.
No, I said that I enjoyed it.
Stop beating Charlie up. Let's hear what dude.
I still,
like. Then
Cats-
we can beat
Cats
him
is
up.
terrible
Okay,
in the
all right.
absolute best way. Dolittle not as much. Dolittle is the weirdest kids movie like I've seen in years. I'm I don't care about spoilers because no one should care about spoilers in this movie. Like it starts with Robert Downey Jr. talking to animals, which is the premise of the movie. But in the beginning, he's actually talking in animal voices. So it shows you that he's like chattering at a squirrel and like barking at a dog.
Like Eliza Thornberry.
He's full on, and then it kind of turns, and you watch him talk to, and they all have the voices of people.
Because that's what we needed, a grounded Dolittle.
Oh my god, it's so crazy. So I'm just gonna say a couple things that happen in this movie, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. So, he puts his head underwater to talk to an octopus to find out what happened to the queen because she's been poisoned. And the octopus says in subtitles, "Snitches get stitches, man." There is a very flirtatious and suicidal dragonfly voiced by Jason Mantzoukas, who is like the crazy guy in every sitcom that you watch. And he's upset because he's trying to make a deal with his ant gang, and the ant dude's being like the Godfather, where he's like, "You come to me on my daughter's wedding," and then he's like, "Wait, your daughter's getting married," and you find out that the dragonfly was dating the ant guy's daughter, and now he's upset because she's now engaged to a scorpion named Jeremy, I think. And then his whole arc, like he's only in a couple scenes, and like every other scene that he's in, he like is upset and like kind of trying to kill himself.
Why am I
It's
laughing?
crazy.
I sound awful.
The movie is funny because it's so weird. There's a big fight scene where the gorilla, who's voiced by Rami Malek, is like really timid, and they're trying to get him to fight, and so the Emma Thompson parrot is like, "Kick him down there," and then like it's the gorilla like kicking a tiger in the crotch, and it's like all slow motion and heroic. The weirdest thing about this movie, though, is its climax, like its final, what you think is going to be a final fight. There's a dragon in the trailer. Yeah. So this dragon is guarding this seed that they have to get because they have to take it to heal the queen. And if the queen dies, Dr. Dolittle loses his grant. It's crazy. Yeah. So at one point, the animals like force him down and give him anesthetics so they can cut his hair and beard. Like they like drug him. But this climax scene of this dragon, you think it's gonna be this big fight to get this dragon, and then like you realize the dragon's mad and grumpy, and Dolittle, being a doctor, is like, "Hold on," and then like the whole climax is him like he opens up the dragon's butt. And like you see the camera facing him, like he's looking in. I knew something was coming. And he starts pulling stuff out. What? Like armor and skeletons and a bagpipe, and there's a big dragon fart. Dude, this movie is crazy. It's one of the most insane things I've ever seen in the theater. And like the dragon butt thing was way too much, but some of the bits made me laugh a lot because they were so like the dragonfly thing. I truly was like belly laughing. It's a bad movie, but in a way that like. It's just crazy and funny. And
I mean,
this
is why
is
I love
really
Charlie,
what
because
now
every single minute of this is what happens in this movie.
Not only do I want to see this movie, but I want to make like everybody in the office sit down in the movie, and we should do like a whole episode just reviewing this movie.
And like Tom Holland's the dog, and at one point Tom Holland's like
crying right now.
Tom Holland like butt scoots out of there. Like there's a big back and forth between John Cena the polar bear and Kumail Nanjiani the ostrich. They have like a rivalry, and they become bros at the end. And then my favorite character is a squirrel. I think his name is Kevin. He's voiced by Craig Robinson. And the movie starts with like this young boy on a hunt with his uncle and his cousin, and he like doesn't want to shoot this bird, but the uncle was like, "You have to shoot
the F word on the podcast.
You have to shoot this thing." He misses on purpose and shoots this squirrel, and he feels bad and runs to try to find the squirrel help and finds Dr. Dolittle. This is the very beginning of the movie, and he asks Dr. Dolittle to help him save the squirrel. And the whole rest of the movie, Craig Robinson's squirrel wants to murder this child for like trying to kill him. So like the kid jumps, and like the squirrel like hopes he dies, and like he's actively talking about murdering this child.
Oh my god!
It is the craziest movie.
What is happening?
Like
I can't right now.
I in my review I said I wanted to compare it to Cats, but that wasn't fair because at least even at its worst, this movie has a coherent story from beginning to end.
I don't feel that way right now.
It like the overall story makes sense. It's bad, but it at least makes sense.
Gas leak in the studio, and we are all just
it is the
inhaling.
Why are we
craziest
surprised?
thing
Downey
I've
once
ever
played the guy
seen.
who was controlled by a dog's soul in a courtroom. Well, I don't remember what movie that was.
Wait, it was Downey that did it?
Yes, where he leapt out of the thing in the courtroom and like licked people and stuff.
I don't remember, but it's crazy. And like this is his post Endgame thing. He produced it, and the director, it was the director of Syria,
Yeah,
Syriana.
Syriana. That was the weirdest.
The writer-director of Syriana wrote and directed this movie. It's a crazy like amalgamation of all these weird things because at some point it's just a fart joke movie, and sometimes it's trying to be a serious story. It's wild in the craziest ways.
This is like a movie that you would have seen a preview for while Tropic Thunder was already playing.
This is the movie.
You know what I mean? Like those fake
what I like is too this movie's about 15 years too late.
Like this is not Robert Downey Jr.
No.
This is Kirk Lazarus.
Yeah.
These are the movies that we, our generation, like grew up watching on DVD. Like I think
never
of like
watched a movie where one of my favorite actors
it goes
stuck his face up a
crazier. But I mean
dragon's ass.
the movies that we can look back and we know are bad.
I never saw anything like that
Kangaroo
as a
Jack,
kid.
or The Haunted Mansion, Dr. Dolittle, the original Dr. Dolittle, or maybe the sequel because the first one's pretty good.
Eddie Murphy's Dr. Dolittles were not like this.
They weren't.
Stop
They weren't as insane like this. But in terms of where you see it and you're like, this is a bad movie. But I kind of
Those
enjoy
were
it
always
because I
cute,
watched it as a
they were
kid.
fine. This just sounds insane.
It's insane. I'm just saying movies that you can look back and know they're bad, but you enjoyed them because you watched them when they were young and they were kind of a part of what you watched.
They should have
It's
also
different
had
for
Robert
kids.
Downey Jr. play
I
all
think
the
it's different for
animals.
kids now because we have Netflix and all that
Yeah, I'm
stuff. There's so
concerned
many
about
things to
kids
watch.
now. If this is like
But
the movie they're
this is that kind of
Yeah.
movie where it's like
They're gonna go to the zoo and start.
this
Just-
movie
just stop that train.
is
Thank
so crazy.
What I was gonna say,
not
would be
any
banned
good.
from anime conventions.
But if
no.
you were talking about him playing things when he'd had a few, if you've had a few and you have someone to take you to a movie this weekend where you're not driving,
Go see Bad Boys for Life.
Yeah, go see Bad Boys for Life.
but also, I mean, you'll
Don't
be
tell
entertained.
people to spend
This
their
is a
money
close
on this.
second. If
No,
everything else
when
is
this
sold
comes
out.
out, when we get a free
Theater-
copy of this,
theater-
this
theater
bears further. We're going to show this in the
subscriptions
office, see what the mental effects are.
Like
on
AMC
people.
and
Still
Regal
gotta
both
pay
have
for gas
subscriptions
to
where
get
you don't
there.
have to pay for every movie. If you got a theater subscription and you guys
All right,
2 hours
we got
to
to
kill,
wrap this up. But
it's crazy. And
I think we could sum this
This
up
is
by
actually a
saying
fever dream that Tony Stark had when he snapped his finger.
basically,
before he actually
based on
died.
everything that Charlie originally just said, we now understand so much better why Robert Downey Jr. has been saying, I might come back as Iron Man.
The post credits, they should add a post credit scene after the first weekend where he's like talking to Bob Iger. So
All right, we got to wrap it up there. That's our review of Dolittle. Charlie, how many stars would you give it?
I gave it because we can't do half stars. I would have given it 1.5 probably. I gave it 2 because the lowest we can give it is a 1, and I was just entertained enough that
All right,
that's
I
what I'm
give it
talking
a 1.
about. He
2,
loves
so 2.
bananas.
Two's fine. That's fair. I gave
it's a
Bad
bad
Boys
movie.
3.5.
I laughed.
because I rioted and tried to rebel against our system, but they made it a 4. So that's our ratings. That'll do it for this episode of Comic Book Nation. If you're just getting into the show, we put up new episodes every Wednesday, every Friday, where you can subscribe to our RSS feed and get regular updates on the show, or you can subscribe at your favorite listening platform. We're on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Google Playlists, or you can go to the Comicbook.com YouTube page and find videos of every episode up there as well. If you are just getting into the show, you can also hit us up at the hashtag Comic Book Nation, where we can talk about anything we talked about on the show. You can let us know your opinions or whatever you want to do. You can find me at Kofi Outlaw.
I am on Twitter at Megan Peters CB.
And I'm at Charlie Ridgely.
And BD, shout it out. Everybody knows you anyway, but shout it out.
What up, Comic Book Nation? You can find me at Brandon Davis BD.
All right. That'll do it for this episode. If you guys
Megan,
want to
you have
leave us...
one key word to say as soon as this is over. Don't
Yep.
mess it up.
Yep.
Kofi, continue. Sorry.
That's all right. If you want to, because I had to think about my next thing anyway. So, if you guys want to get some free t-shirts, leave those 5-star reviews on iTunes. Next week, when Janelle is back, we will be doing some more review reading. So be sure to tune in for that, because if you want that free t-shirt, we need that 5-star review on iTunes. Otherwise, that'll do it. This is Comic Book Nation. We're getting out of here. Peace.
Deuces.